All right, here we go.
What's good, everybody? I'm Robert Dickens Jr.
This is Ryan Reed.
This is Elanders Frazier.
This is John Gaal, and you're listening to Volta.
Changing the conversation
For percussion educators,
Designers,
And performers.
What's up, everybody? You're joining us for another episode of Volta Percussion, where we are changing the conversation. We have Elanders, John, Robert, and myself. And today we are going to be talking about our experience teaching as percussion instructors and percussion directors with band directors who have experience or their main instrument is percussion as well. So I know in some off-camera conversations that we've had, we've talked a little bit about this, and I know Robert has some stories. I mean, we all have stories. I'm sure we all have stories. So, Robert, do you want to start this one off?
Well, I certainly would. I'll say for the past 4 years for sure, which he probably won't watch this, but if he does, he'll probably be laughing. I worked with a great band director in Georgia. His name is Nicholas Garofalo, and he is a percussionist. And one of the things that I think that is such a plus with working with Nick in general, just because it has been enjoyable, is just the fact that we both are 100% gung-ho about like the percussion program being great. And I think that one of the pluses, I would say the definite plus that I noticed that I felt like even in my interview that I was like, okay, if I get this job, this is going to be great, is that I'm not going to have a band director that's going to fight me about taking chances with the percussion program. You know what I mean? As far as like, do you want to do indoor? Do you want to do PASIC? Do you want to do percussion ensemble over here? You want to do a festival? Like, I don't have that issue. And I think in a lot of instances, there are in other band directors that I've worked with, they just don't get it. They just don't understand. It's like, well, why do you want to have an indoor program? That's not really a big deal. Well, why do you want to do percussion ensemble and indoor? Like, why should we not do marching band stuff in class? Like, why do we need another marimba? Why do we need this, piece of equipment or electronics or blah, 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 blah? Like, just have those kids double up. It'll be fine. Like, it's like, whoa, it's, I don't know. I think there's a lot of things that like the plus is there's a lot of things about the job that you're doing and that I feel like that I've always done that I haven't had to explain. Just a little bit of background. He was the percussion director here and actually started the indoor program at this school before eventually becoming the head director. So like we kind of had that thing in common of like, he knows what it's like to do an indoor show. He knows what it's like to put the drill out there and get kids involved and talk to parents and build props and, go to regionals, go to Dayton, all that kind of thing. I think one of the challenges is obviously that we just have different approaches. And I don't think it's necessarily so much about us being percussionists per se, which that does kind of throw a little bit of a monkey wrench into it. Because we both feel very strongly about our opinions because of that. But I think that one of the things that has made it difficult is just we are different personalities. And I think that that's as much of an issue with non-percussionists as it is with percussionist band directors. But I feel like it can get a little bit more personal. And we all have like our little pet peeves a little bit more when we're both percussionists. That's kind of like a background into my story. I feel like there's definitely been more ups than downs, even though we both gripe about each other about random stuff. But the pros outweigh the cons for sure. And if I had to choose, I would say that I would rather, which I feel like this is a good question for everybody. Would you rather work with a head band director whose main instrument is percussion, yes or no, and why? And I would say yes, because of all the reasons that I just said.
If I answer that question, I think it would depend on their age and experience. Not to be an ageist, but I think it just depends on where they fell within the culture of percussion, because I feel like I've worked with directors in the past that have percussion backgrounds, but if their percussion background is early 70s, early 80s, they have a very different experience and concept of what percussion can add to an ensemble versus what I have experienced. It's a 20-year difference, you know? However, if you're working with somebody where that gap is a lot shorter, maybe they have different experiences that can assist with that. So it really just depends on maybe. I almost feel like it's not based on whether or not they're percussionists or not, more so than it's just what level do they participate in the activity, and whether it's concert percussion, symphony work, indoor percussion, marching band, percussion ensembles, like at what level do they participate? Because I really think that regardless of their age, that's really going to dictate where you can connect. And like you said, like the goods outweighing the negatives is where you can connect with that individual on a pedagogy standpoint. So I feel like the ones that I've worked with some in the past where we didn't really connect because our way of looking at things were starkly different. And then I've worked with some of the past that we did connect because we were both open-minded enough to be able to have those conversations that were not negative, but they were just like, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Well, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? So we were able to come to common ground about how we approach things separately, but for the program to continue to rise. You know what I mean? So I really think it comes down to the level of participation that they have within the percussion activity versus, just two warring percussionists. Because I feel like, I try to be as open-minded as possible about the activity, because I've come to an age now to I realize that me being set in my ways when collaborating with other individuals that have a lot to give, like a lot of information to give, and to put it on a playing field, we're always talking about somebody who has something to offer. Because if they don't have anything to offer, then it's always going to be a tough conversation with somebody that doesn't have anything else to add, right? But if we make a blanket assumption that the person that you're collaborating with has something to offer, then I think there's always something to be gained. And you have to start those conversations early so that you can plan for what you're going to do. You know what I mean? Like if you're having those conversations after band camp has taken place, then there's somebody's feelings are going to get hurt when you try to do something new. You know what I mean? But if you're having those conversations in the preseason, then you can work out a game plan of what you're going to do and how you do it. And then you also have time to explain why it is that you do things, which we always talk about on this podcast, the why being so important. You have an opportunity to explain why you do things, and then maybe a better chance of people seeing that process and then why it could be beneficial, or why we need to at least try it out to see if it would benefit this particular program that we're participating in. You know what I mean?
I think my experience kind of echoes Robert's a little bit. I've worked in a couple jobs now where either the assistant band director or the head band director have been percussionists, and by and large, it's been a pretty positive experience in what I have experienced. Just in terms of being able to bounce ideas off of each other and it being collaborative, like Elanders was talking about. I'm not going to say I've never had to give a gentle reminder of like, hey, you brought me here for a reason. But I've had to give that gentle reminder as many times to band directors that are not percussionists that are percussionists. Because sometimes, we all have our roles that we fit into. And sometimes, in those hot topic meetings, whether they be design meetings or instructional meetings or whatnot, sometimes you've got to say, hey, you trusted me to do this job, so please just continue to give me that trust. So, I mean, the biggest, I think, benefit that I experienced with it was having that communication with the booster program and like, hey, these things are needs. And then there's a band director that like understands why, new drums are a need, or why new mallets are a need, or why we need to, upgrade the marimba that's being held together by duct tape and shoestring. I was fortunate at one school. We were like, all right, our battery's like falling apart. The drums are like hanging down off the carriers, and we were a show band, so we weren't competitive or anything. But we were like, we just need these drums to give these kids a good experience. And he was able to go to the district and get money to get us not brand new drums, but to get the 1 year used out of an indoor program, and showed up. No muss, no fuss. Like other places, I fought for years to get instruments and never got instruments. So I think it's definitely a good thing to be able to get instruments. I did have to, on another job, I did have to explain like, why do I want these instruments instead of the brand that they want, or why, what is different, and why does that matter? Why are we buying this stuff instead of that stuff? It's like, you're not wrong. Like, these are my takes, and I've had hands-on experience with all these different things. So I understand that, when you were a percussion director, you were buying all this stuff because it was the hot thing on the market. But these improvements have been made, so this is why I want to go with this stuff. And usually, by and large, we meet somewhere in the middle. But overall, it has been a positive experience. And, the best part is we're always trying to reach the same common goal. Like, the goal is just to make the kids as good as possible. We don't always agree on how to get there, but sometimes it's a longer road than others. But, everyone's heart is in the right place. And I think as long as you work with that, whatever little road bumps you hit along the way are usually easily overcome.
I know everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, obviously. In my limited experience, I like a director who has percussion experience, because I have found that they tend to be very organized and that they can delegate and move things very quickly. Like I said, it's different for everyone. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, but in my limited experience, by having a director who has that percussion background, if you keep your communication open and they trust you, like they can delegate the percussion section to you as the director, that they can balance other things: woodwinds, brass, color guard, big picture, marching band things. And whenever you guys have your staff meetings at the end of the day, or maybe at the beginning before rehearsal, again, I find that directors with percussion experience tend to listen and to understand that big picture, vertical alignment, timing issues will eventually be fixed, and they don't have to micromanage those things. And so they can focus their attention on other aspects of the program rather than having to focus primarily on percussion because that is their instrument. But everyone's different. I understand. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, but I think directors with a percussion background are very organized and can delegate things better than other people. Just saying.
I really think that's I think that's personality dependent, though, because like, you've been fortunate.
I'll agree with that. I'll say yes.
Yeah, I think you've been fortunate to maybe work with some individuals that are very organized that just also happen to be percussionists. But I think there are percussionists that exist that are very disorganized, just like there can be any other instrumentalist or, color guard director or anybody that teaches anything that can be highly disorganized in what they do, but obviously your correlation comes from your personal experiences. But
I'm just going to shut up then, since we're all going to bag on John Gaal for his opinion.
No, we're not bagging on you, John. I think it's your experiences. I think what we're trying to get down to the core to is that when it's a philosophical difference, are there any things that are impeding the process of what y'all are trying to accomplish together? I think that's the question we're trying to ask here. It's not about whether somebody's disorganized. Anybody can be disorganized. But when you have philosophical differences that you don't budge on, does that impact or impede the amount of progress that you can make in a program?
The answer to that is yes. That's an easy answer. Yes.
But is it yes every time?
Yeah.
And what would change that answer?
Nothing. You go to a different program. don't worry with all that negativity. Get out of there. You're better.
I think it comes down to that trust, like you were brought in to do a job. I said it earlier. You were brought in to do a job, just like the trumpet tech is brought in to do a job and the mellow tech is brought in to do a job. Like, a lot of times, like, it's weird. Band directors are almost more trusting of their like wind techs than they are their percussion techs. And it's like, that's
non-percussion band directors included.
Yeah, that's every band director where it's like, all right, the trumpet tech says we should be playing double high G's with a, whatever on top. Okay, great. I just want to play some paradiddles. Why is it wrong to play a double right hand sticking pattern there?
Ruins all of it. It ruins all of it.
I really want to. It's interesting that you said that about the trust. I really want to know, how do you guys, in situations that you have been in, band directors that are percussionists or non-percussionists, how have you guys gone about building that trust? Because I think that obviously when you do get in, you're starting a new relationship with someone, this is kind of your first date, first year there, whatever, blah, 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 blah. Like, especially with people that do the same thing as you, I think there's an immediate either trust or distrust because they have their own personal opinion. So how have you guys gone about building that trust with your band directors that they know that you're going to handle things, or like Ron said, when you have to, make it a point to say, hey, you brought me here to do this particular thing. Like, how do you guys go about building that trust?
I always start with inviting them to rehearsals, like into the rehearsal space. I will say that for most of the percussion instructors that I've ever worked with, like, your rehearsal space is sacred. And I know a lot of instructors that feel that way, that like, my rehearsal space is sacred. You need my permission to be here. And it doesn't matter who you are. And that's just, like, an open rehearsal is a foreign concept. And when somebody does walk into your rehearsal, you're like, who is that? Why are they here? You know what I mean? You'll be asking those questions like real short and fast, like, who gave them permission to walk into this gym? So it's like, I feel like inviting them into the rehearsal space kind of gives them a feel for how you are, how you act, how you interact, etc. And then that kind of eases them into, okay, I understand how this person acts, interacts, etc. They're fine. They don't need me here. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's just about having that open invitation to say, hey, why don't you come check out a rehearsal? Let me know what you think. And I've done that in the past where it's not even like, it's a chill thing. It's like, hey, you want to come check out like the last hour rehearsal and just give me your basic thoughts of what you think about the show. And do you see anything that we could pay more attention to? I just want a new set of eyes here. And that's a great way to build on a relationship, is to invite them into your space to see things from a different point of view, to really catch on to how do they form an opinion on something that you're so involved in, right? It's like starting any relationship, like, like, babe, what do you think about this? It's like, I hate, you watching YouTube videos all the time. I wish you would just turn them off, but let me show you the YouTube videos that I watch. And then now y'all watching YouTube videos together because she didn't know you like those kind of YouTube videos. You know what I mean? Like, it's that situation, like introducing somebody to something and letting them almost kind of pick the opinion and then seeing, okay, what is it about this that allows you to trust in me and what I'm doing so you can see my process? You know what I mean? And I think a lot of it for me was always getting them to see my process. Once they got used to my process, they understood I'm not the person you got to worry about. I'm handling everything from top to bottom, parents included. I'm not the one you got to worry about. If there's a problem, I'm going to come find you because I'm not trying to be in trouble in any way, shape, form, or fashion. But if you want to see how I work and how I process, how I think things through, please, you're always invited. You know, have that open invitation. You're always invited. Everybody else, though, need permission to come through that door. Doors are locked. 6:30 hit, doors are locked. You don't
All
need
right, Joe
key.
Clark.
Yeah.
You got
I gotta pop the door for you to get in. So that's how it's going down.
Yeah, I can definitely take a lot from that. I feel like some of that, some of the situations that I know that that I went through here was just being able, like you said, being able to see the process. And I think for me, being able to adapt somewhat to the personality of my band director as well. Like that's a big thing that I feel like I have gotten a lot better at and that I've learned a lot more because Nick is definitely the opposite of me. He is like, he's the person that I can be teaching a class at my other school that's 15 minutes away, teaching a virtual class, and he will bust in the office and be like, hey, what's going on? How you guys doing? Just jump on the camera. Hey, how's everybody doing today? Blah, blah. Like he just has that kind of a personality to where like he has a huge personality. That's who he is. And for me, like, yeah, I can be personable with my students and stuff like that, but that's just not the way that I am on a regular basis. You know how like when you work in an office, like you got those people that like their door is always open. And then you got those other people that like when they come in, their door is closed until like 11 o'clock.
Till the meeting start.
I'm the person that consistently, like my door is probably gonna be closed until I'm like, oh, I need to unlock the door because everybody that comes in here is like knocking on the door, like trying to get in. Like that's who I am. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I think when you have a different personality than someone else that you work with, it can be kind of unsettling because they don't really know how to gauge, you know, you and like how you do things. So I think that, like you said, Elanders, like letting people in on your process, letting them know like what your plan is and like how you plan to take care of things. I know that that's something that I feel like gains that trust too, because one thing that I think we all know about band directors is there's probably a large faction of band directors that have been burnt by percussion instructors. There's a large faction of band directors that have been burnt by lazy percussion instructors, percussion instructors not showing up, not doing what they're supposed to do, you know, just doing crazy stuff. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, that gives kind of a bad rap to, you know, the drum community that it's like, oh, he's a drum instructor. So, you know, he's just going to show up in some flip-flops and cut up t-shirt and click some sticks. And like, this is his life. He's a beach bum and, you know, he can't pay his bills on time. And, like, you know, his life is pretty much in shambles. Like he's not mature enough to be a band director. So he's just a drum guy. You know what I mean? So that whole kind of a vibe, which I get that. There are some people out there like that, not denying that. It is what it is. But at the same time, I feel like I want to show myself just as professional as the band directors that I work with, just as worthy of the students' respect, hornline students or wind students included. You know what I mean? So yeah, I somewhat take my cues off of the people that I work with. Like Nick is kind of a fancy dressing dude. I come in here looking pretty nice every day. You know what I mean? I try to figure out how nice can I look without wearing a tie, because I don't like wearing ties and I haven't worn one in a long time. But I mean, that's something to think of. Like, that relationship is only going to be built by getting to know each other. And obviously nobody wants to be like, hey, I don't know you. You don't know me. Let's go out on a band director percussion instructor date. Like, that's kind of weird. But you have to find your own organic ways of getting other people to trust you and to connect with you and to know your background, because you can definitely have a lot to give, but if you don't have that connection with the other people around you, it makes it really hard for them to allow you to give that, because they're just thinking about what they know. So I think that's a really big part of getting people to trust you, is really figuring out, how can I start to forge that relationship myself? Like, what ways can I extend that olive branch and like let them know, so that we're both on the same page, we're saying the same things? Because like Ron said, we're both on the same team, hopefully.
Right. Well, and that relationship is so important, because as a percussion, instructor director, unless you're a full-time school employee, like unless you are a band director that is the percussion director in the school, those students are not working in your process as much as they are the band director's process, and this is regardless of what experience the band director, like what main instrument the band director has. But like the first thing I do when I go into any job or even if I'm teaching an indoor drumline that I'm not the director of, it's like I want to figure out like what processes they've been using, because those are what the students are already used to, and then I can work my teaching philosophies and methods around those processes, and I tried to, although not always successfully, I tried to adopt some of like the band director's personality traits, like if they're bigger and larger than life, like the kids are used to, that's what the kids respond to. I have to be bigger and larger than life. Okay. There's some days where I'm going to show up to the school and be like, all right, guys, we just got to play the 16 notes in time. Let's go. There is no rah-rah cheerleader Ryan today. We didn't have our coffee. Let's go play the 16 notes in time. And then there's other days where, you drink a pot of coffee and you show up and you're like throwing things all over the place and acting a crazy fool, because that's what the kids are used to, bigger, larger than life personalities, but I think those are how you take a program to the next level as well. Not just working with the band director, but taking the program to that next level as fast as possible, because the kids are already working in that culture and in that setup and on those processes, that if you disrupt that, at least for a little while, you're slowing down the train at that point. So I think if you're like, all right, these kids are moving, I was brought on to do a job, like I can do my job, I just got to figure out like where are my points of attack from, and then attack those. You can't go bum rush in like a bull in a china shop always, okay? And that is almost never the right way to approach a job. But like for me, the first thing is always figuring out like what processes are the students used to and how I can best fit in those. And anything that I don't like nudge into another position, not like grab it, throw it off to the side, because again, kids don't deal with abrupt change. Band directors don't deal with abrupt change. Like, you are a foreign object in their space. So it's making it really work, and again, figuring out like how can you complement each other, and I think that's almost where having a band director that is a percussionist, even if they don't like play the same way as you, or maybe even play at the same level that you do, because again, as a band director, they're not spending as much time practicing percussion as hopefully you are as the percussion director, but maybe they've reached that kid with a piece of information that you want to get to them, but like how you're delivering it is not working. Maybe they know how to deliver it to that kid. I've had plenty of conversations where it's like, I just can't get through to Steve. Like, what am I missing here? It's like, well, you gotta, talk, like, do it this way. You got to show him this and that. Like, be patient. He'll get it. That kind of thing. And I'm like, all right, I'm giving him all the information. And, they're usually able to direct me in a way that I haven't thought of because, again, they're in that system. They're around that student more often than I am. Now in my current job, it's a little bit different because I'm in the school 4 days a week. So I see that those kids almost more than the band director does now, where we pull out kids for percussion lessons or for percussion groups. But we still do a good job complimenting each other, and like his personality leads the ship, so I've got to support that.
Yeah, I think that that's really great. Like you said, just figuring out the personality difference is really a big part. And I think that sometimes it is a difficult situation, especially if I can't think of any instances where I've stayed at a program and got and inherited a new band director. Wait, I do have one. Yeah, I have one as of right now where I inherited a new band director and they kept me on. So I'm not saying inherited as in like, I'm some tenured employee and it's like, you're the new guy on the block. Like, don't fire me, y'all. Don't fire me. Nah, but I mean, I think it is finding that person's personality and like how they view things and how they've done things in the past too. And I think that especially when we are the person that's kind of like coming in and out, we may not necessarily feel like we should be the person that takes the onus upon us to figure out how we work together. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, well, you're kind of like the head person. So like you tell me what you want me to do. When in actuality, there may be situations where we need to jump in there and be like, hey, this is what I've done in the past. This is what has really worked with the kids. Like, what do you see with this? So that you can figure out how you work together.
Yeah, I think those after rehearsal conversations are very beneficial. When the staff gets together in the office or before rehearsal, like that really gives you a chance. I know we talked in a couple of podcasts previously about the hang, and sometimes it's not always the hang, but it's about making sure you have open and honest dialogue, especially during planning sessions and stuff like that, so that they can understand like how you functionally think through things, and how you approach things from your like miniature program inside of the grand program. You know what I mean? Because I like what you said, Rob, about like the inheritance of, and I've definitely had a couple of times where I was the existing percussion instructor, new band director came in, and then all of a sudden I'm trying to keep my will of instruction working inside of this new framework that has to exist and coexist inside of the program for it to keep moving forward. And in order to make sure that whatever you got going doesn't change, having those conversations ahead of time and getting to know how they process, you can start, like Ryan said, doing those little nudges that are going to allow you to keep moving forward, but will work itself into the new framework of the grand scheme of everything. And that's just a thing that I don't think we ever know. Like, we don't know if the change of hands is going to be for the better of the program, or if it's going to take it in another direction that might not be as good as where you want it to be. You don't know. You kind of have to feel it out as it's going or as it's happening. And then just make sure that, whatever your goals and, what you want to get out of that program continues to move in the direction that you're trying to move it. If it becomes too unbearable or you're in a situation that you can't coexist, then that's where you have to seek other employment. And you got to be honest about that too. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes every situation is not the best situation, even though it's a good situation. Doesn't mean it's the best situation for you. You got to be open and honest with yourself about that and say, well, maybe I need to find a different situation to be in. You know what I mean? And I don't think that's a dig at anybody that you might be working with or working for. That's just knowing enough about yourself to know, can you make a long-lasting impression where I'm at given the circumstances?
Mm-hmm.
And it's as simple as that. So
yeah, and I will be the first to tell that I am not I've told band directors that I was working with before, like, if you don't feel confident in me doing this, then please let me know, because I will, do something else, because I wouldn't want to be in a situation where you're being constantly questioned, or like people don't know, like, what is your ability to actually do the job? Like, do they have confidence in your pedagogy and the way that you approach things? Like, so I think that that's something that's very, very, very important, because when you're in a situation where the person that is employing you or that you have to work with has a lot of questions and is doing a lot of second guessing as far as the decisions that you're making, it's going to make you very insecure, which is going to make the program that you're trying to create insecure, so that you can't actually go in a direction. Like, I can definitely say there's nothing more nerve-wracking than feeling like the band director doesn't really have your back as far as what you're doing. So that's really, really, really important. I would say, after, the whole come to Jesus thing and y'all talk about it, if that person really doesn't believe in what you're doing, then I definitely would say seek employment elsewhere. But I definitely wouldn't say to do that without actually having a talk, so that they can see, like, hey, these are my skills, these are my background, this is what I'm good at. One thing I will say as an example, specifically here with Nick, is one thing that I think that we both think about. We're both trying to educate, but we're both thinking from different standpoints. I'm thinking about who is the worst student that I have, like who really sucks. You know what I mean? I'm thinking about like the bottom of the program. And his approach is thinking about, like, who are my most advanced players? How can I expose those players, give them the best opportunities possible? So it's not that I'm not thinking about that, and it's not that he's not thinking about the players that are not as advanced, but we are coming from two different vantage points, and we meet in the middle, because you need both, which is the subject of another podcast that we're probably going to be doing later on this season. Talking about the individual player or just the entire group as a whole. But I think that that's something that's important. Like Ryan said before, as long as you guys are on the same team and you understand how you're attacking it and they understand how they attack it, then you guys can work together for the success of the students. But if you guys aren't set on, hey, this is the way that I'm going to do things, like, hey, I'm going to let you run percussion class. Or, hey, I do enjoy teaching percussion, so I do want to come in and teach some stuff every now and then, but I really just kind of want to teach the higher literature stuff. I don't really want to teach the little, Bobo stuff. That's kind of what Nick leaves me to do, because he wants to do Crown of Thorns and stained glass and all this other stuff, and you're just like, oh, I want to do that. And I'm like, okay, great. I'll figure out how our kids can figure out how to be able to play stuff that's in 3/16 and all these other crazy time signatures and all that. All right. So yeah, I think you just have to figure out like that person's personality with yours, and whether or not you guys can coexist, whether or not you guys are on the same page, because all percussion educators are not meant to work together.
True
There's
statement.
really nothing worse than that pins and needles feeling, and I can say that from experience. Like, it's usually not ever caused by one person. Like, it's usually not caused by the percussion director or the band director, but it's usually like little tiny things that like build up that you don't realize until you're like, I don't like it here. I think he doesn't like me. What am I doing? All right. And I at that point it's too late. So yeah, to circumvent those things, the early conversation, and Elanders brought it up, the hang. I think that's the most important thing. I always find those conversations to be way easier to be had over a soda pop, because you're usually in a more casual environment at that point where you can speak a little bit more freely, and nobody's got the like buttoned up suit and tie, like I'm the boss presence. Like you're on neutral ground. So anytime that there's hard conversations that need to be had, that's a big thing that I learned kind of early on, was like always try to have those big conversations, those hard conversations on neutral ground. And the band room is not neutral ground, by the way, just so
Dum,
you know.
dum,
The
dum.
band room is never neutral ground. Was that Robert?
I said dun dun dun. Correct. People should know that.
Yeah, that is their domain you're in right now. So, I'm always a fan of like going out, having those conversations, and I've had those more times than I can count, where it's like, all right, this thing's not working, like I'm doing something wrong. I feel like we're not where we need to be right now. Like, what are your thoughts? That kind of thing. And again, like being open with them, asking for their thoughts. Like Lander said early on, bring them into rehearsal, let them come see it. Some of the best band directors I've worked with have just, they hire me because they trust me, but they still want to come check out like how things are going and see that kind of stuff because they want to know, and they want to know not only for like because they want to know, but they want to know in case a parent has a question. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone into a new program and like I do something a little bit different, and now Susie's got a complaint about how we're doing things, and they just want to come over and see, like, art. Is Susie complaining because you're like throwing a drumstick at her head, or is Susie complaining because you're doing something a little bit different than what the last guy did? And that's not a big deal. So always encourage like open communication, honest communication, and like watch their rehearsals too. That's the thing we didn't talk about. Like as much as our rehearsals are open to them, their rehearsals are open to us. If you want to learn how somebody teaches, watch them teach. So,
Yeah.
John, you got anything else you want to add? You've been quiet. I want to wake you up.
No, you guys are doing great. I'm going to keep my opinions to a minimum so I don't get bagged on again.
Oh my God. John is so triggered.
Whining and crying.
John is the sensitive one of the podcasts, if you haven't figured it out through a season and a half yet.
Mr. Sensitive. I think you also can't limit how you connect with your director based on the season that you're in either. You know what I mean? Like if you're in the fall season, get on the tower if you've got space. Go to the tower and see how they process things, how they work things out when that microphone shuts off. You know what I mean? Attend one of their concert rehearsals and see how they focus in when it's them with their prime ensemble, if it's the symphonic band or the wind ensemble, whatever it is, how they dial in those performers. Because I think what you start to learn when you see people from different angles inside of an element, because I know sometimes we can get tunnel vision when we're trying to just do what we focus on doing. When you see somebody in a different venue and how they do things, you start to see more of their process and how it's tailored depending upon what they're trying to direct at that moment. You know what I mean? And I think that's cause enough to connect with somebody on a deeper level so that you can really understand their transparency when they come out to the broad range. When it's like, okay, now I'm addressing the full band, or now I'm addressing all of the parents at a booster meeting. Like you get to understand like the individualized detail of how they functionally think. So now it makes more sense when you zoom out and you see that, oh, I see why they did it that way. Oh, I see why they approach things that way, because this is how they dial into, what I'm not going to say it. I'm messing up. Yeah, that. Yeah, that's how they dial in to be specific about what they're trying to do. So.
Nice.
That's a really good point too about being present. I think is a little bit of what you were getting at. Like nothing is worse, and I say this as a percussion director who is in the school but also has staff that is only around like during rehearsals. Like if you want to have a bigger voice, you gotta be present. And nothing is more impressive to a band director than like when you pop into a concert band rehearsal, and like help the percussion section get better. especially if your job is like you are the marching guy. You do the marching band rehearsals, and you show up in the winter. You show up for your winter drumline rehearsals, and that's really all year round. But like if you can show up, and again, if you're working a day gig, you got to be strategic and smart about your time, obviously. But if you can show up and like get the kid to play a better concert buzz roll or better tambourine or better crash cymbals in their concert band program, that's going to develop trust quicker, because now you're not just the drum guy, but like you can contribute what he's passionate about, and then you can encourage him to, hey, come contribute. This is your program. Like my indoor drumline is still facilitating your program. Come help with what we're passionate about. I'm sure the kids would love to see you at a show. They'd love to see you come in. Just text some feet for us, for an hour or whatever. Just give us some thoughts, like pump the kids up, that kind of thing. But like that is a two-way street, and I don't think percussion directors think about that enough. I think we put on our marching band hats, and we're like marching band or indoor drumline or this, that, or the other thing. And it's like, no, they want our help for the concert side too, and I think that is a big way to boost that relationship. That's not just like, oh, he can play some flam drags and teach the kids to play paradiddle diddles.
But I can do that too. I want to make that I can also play some flam drags.
Make sure that that's known.
You're right. I want to make it clear, very clear. I can also still play flam drags.
I definitely think that that's something that happens a lot, is people that want people to buy into them, but they're not willing to put that time in. And you have to. I mean, I've had situations previously with people that I've worked with in different places, staff members, etc., that like they want to have a bigger hand in like what's going on, or maybe they want to get paid more, or they want to do this, that, or whatever. But if you're not consistent and you're not showing how you can bring value outside of just, what it is that you're doing, people aren't going to give you that just due. They're not going to give you the reins, the key to the Ferrari, and just like, do donuts in Kmart parking lot. Like they're not going to let you do that, because the only thing that you care about is the snares. Do you know what I mean? That's all you care about is, oh, the snare sounded great, so we had a great run. It's like, no, did you hear the rest of the battery? Like, did you hear the battery balance? Did you hear the vertical alignment? Are you paying attention to these things? Like, do you even care about those things, right? And I speak from experience, just because, when I first moved to Atlanta, the first 4 years that I was here, that was all I did was tech. I was just doing battery stuff. That was it. And, a friend of mine who moved somewhere else told me to, kind of interview for the job. Didn't really work out. But that did kind of put it in my mind, okay, I think I might actually be able to be a percussion director and not just some battery dude. But I had to figure out, how can I bring that value? How can I create my own system that allows me to make sure that my students know all these things, so that band directors are aware, hey, this isn't just some dude that can, as Elanders said, can play some great flam drags. You know what I mean? Even grid them maybe, But you got to be able to do something other than that. And it's like, hey, okay, great, you can do that. That's cute. But your kids, they still sound like, 5 weeks of just dumpster juice. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to figure out how to make them better. And if you're not good at making kids better, then why should we pay you more money, bring you in on design meetings, allow you to have say on like what's happening? Like, why would we allow you to do that? So I think that's something too, like how invested we are. But I will say, as a caveat to that, you definitely got to make sure that you're investing in the right place. Invest somewhere where they value percussion, even if it's not a band director that is a percussionist. I will say, in particular, the favorite band directors that I've ever worked with have all been band directors that valued percussion, meaning they were also going to value me too. Like the first and only band director that I can think of that bought me dang near everything that I wanted. Like I got a 535 Pearl battery set that was chrome, just beautiful, beautiful battery set, was bought by a non-percussionist band director. So again, now of course he was like, we're getting a Pearl Philharmonic this, and we're getting the mahogany blah 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 concert band. Like his best friend happened to be a percussionist, so he was like, I want our stuff to sound good. You can only invest where there's a band director that really cares about that percussion program. And I think that does kind of tie to the feeder program too. And I feel like we might have said this as well, but this is really important, specifically if you're going to invest in a high school program. You gotta find a band director that cares enough about what it is that you guys are both doing at the high school that they will go to the middle school and make the connection for you. Because if not, you're not going to see the fruits of your labor. You're just going to start over and over and over again every single year. And it is hard and almost unfair to say, oh, okay, you're the drum guy, go make the connection for yourself. Like you're not even really in that situation like that. So if you don't have that person, then I would say I would be careful with my commitment per se and my buy-in. But when you find that place and you find somewhere that really values it, I say go all in, because I think the payoff can be great. Thanks, John.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's nothing worse than buying into somewhere that's never going to pay back a portion of your buy-in, because you're almost never going to get what you give, but what you give should at least be a portion, or what you get should at least be a portion of what you give. And I have to say, I think my new favorite phrase is dumpster juice. I've heard that before. I think that's my new favorite saying.
Watch me find like 3 ways to fit dumpster juice in my daily vernacular every day.
Hey man, there's nothing worse, man, than some dumpster juice, bro. When you walk by a dumpster and it just smells like just old milk and rotten orange juice and just all that stuff is like leaking out of the dumpster, man. It's gross. And sometimes it sounds like that. It's just a reality. They know we still love them, but hey, we're gonna get it clean by later on. But right now, it just sounds like dumpster juice, bro.
That's amazing.
Best. That's the best thing in the world. Oh man.
Well, do you guys have any last final thoughts for this conversation?
I'd say just trust the process and connect. Like if you're connecting with somebody on the right level and you trust the process to work itself forward, then sky's the limit on what you can do. But you can't have the trust without the connection, and having the connection without the trust is not really a connection at all. It's kind of false, and half-hearted. So you got to have the trust and you have to connect, probably on a deeper level. So then deeper than surface. So.
Well, I think this has been a really good conversation, just in terms of, how to continue to grow a program, working with other people and contributing not only to the growth of your percussion program, but the overall band program and that kind of stuff. And I hope that everyone is able to walk out of here with something that they can take away to continue to build their relationships and to build their percussion programs. As always, we would love to hear about your experience teaching with percussion, band directors that are percussionists or band directors that are non-percussionists, and things that you have liked liked about it, disliked about it, all that good stuff. You can catch us on Instagram at Volta Percussion. You can also email us your questions or stories at our email address, which is voltapercussion@gmail.com. You can also catch us on YouTube. Our handle for YouTube is Volta, right? Just Volta? Is it Volta Percussion?
I'm pretty sure it's just Volta, but if you search Volta Percussion, you'll probably find us as well.
Yes. I think that's all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as always, we have Mr. Robert Dickens, Mr. Elanders Frazier, Mr. Sensitive John Gaal, and I am
New name
Ryan
forever.
We will catch you next time. See ya.
Peace.